inside at that point, and then we give you feedback. So I don't want your guests to anticipate that, oh, they come back or that's.
No, they know, they know. I'm actually pretty good.
Let me log in.
Yes,
and I'll
thank you.
pull up your stuff. And you know what? If you can record, if you don't mind recording this,
I'm
then we
already-
have it, to.
Already am. Hey, Kim, where are you sitting?
Yeah.
As people come in, you gotta let them in, and the camera will need to be turned around so they can see me.
Oh, Josh, you are watching. Are we so excited? Look, the children's are here. The parents are here. The other parents are here. My aunt and my grandma. My brother just did his dissertation defense. Yeah. You go ahead and think.
So I'm hoping that Bella has to get into his book.
Okay, let's see. Oh, no.
It'll be a charity. It does have new owners, but there's the guys that 14 years ago.
Oh, and are you moving up?
Hello.
Yeah.
Joel, the way they ran it in Joe's was off that computer. And then the other guy was just logged into it.
You figure that out?
Yeah, because this does not have a forward facing option. I can probably still record from here. I can probably record from here because this is the master owner of the,
Oh, good.
but he just needs to probably join it from there and share. There's other people on here too, though.
Hey. Hey, you.
Josh,
Hey. Talking to you.
he doesn't have your sound on.
Nobody can talk.
Okay.
I think you're wrapping some.
Oh, gosh.
I'm also making that computer the host.
Okay. So I need to unmute it, right?
Yes.
We are going to go ahead and get started. I'm Heather Poliana. I am chair of Joel's dissertation committee. And then the other committee members are Dr. Trevor Miller, who directs our PhD program, and then Dr. Brandon Rogers, who directs graduate programs currently. So we're thrilled. This is our first event in our PhD program. He is the first one to get here. So we are thrilled. It is a historical moment for us. But the format and how this is going to go is he's going to present for about 30 minutes. His research findings, etc. Then we'll dismiss everyone. And then only Joel will come back. That's just the protocol so that we can get him feedback, all of those good things. I mean, you're welcome to wait, in the lobby, etc. So that he can come out when we're finished, but that'll be the protocol. And we dismiss y'all. So I'm going to turn it over to him for his time and we'll go from there. Thank you. I'm so glad y'all are all here. This is great.
Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I want to say a big thank you in particular. Dr. Miller, thank you so much for all this time during this process. I want to say thank you to all of you who are coming. Can still help speak louder for the microphone. So thank you to all of you who are here. As the support that I felt for this community is incredible. So thank you very much. So let's get into it. What is the title of my dissertation? Understanding factors contributing to foster care placement stability, how do burnout, trauma, and training affect the efficacy of foster care. Little flashback of what I was trying to be when I did the program, this longer version of the custom system. So let me tell you a little bit about my background and how I got into it. In 2003, I started working in Georgia as a clinician, largely with the foster care system. And what I began seeing through the foster care system was children who were being bounced from location to location to location. And what that meant was an unstable therapeutic relationship. It meant multiple attachment injuries. It meant kids didn't have access to their own resources. It just meant there were problems all over the place. I didn't like it, and I wanted to figure out how we could do something better. So let's talk a little bit about what foster care looks like in the United States first. According to the Department of Health in 2021, there were 391,098 children in foster care in the United States. Of those, 35%, or roughly 137,000 children, went into relative or fictive kin. Fictive kin is essentially, I am so close to the family and they is relative family. 44%, or approximately 172,000 went to foster homes, and 9%, or about 35,000 went to congregate parents, so more commonly known as group homes. Now, if you're doing the math on these numbers, there's an additional 12% of kids that went into other types of placements. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more into the community I work in Georgia. In Georgia, as of September 30th, 2021, according to DHS.gov, there were 35.7% of children in, 10,800 children in care. Of those children, 35.7% exited care in less than 1 year. 24.6% exited care before the 2-year mark. And kids that were in care more than 2 years was 39%. This is an important number to remember because national average for this amount of time kids are in care is 21.7 months according to the AFCARS report. The AFCARS report is the Adoption and Foster Care Analysis System. This is it's an organization that collects the data from every state for kids in care. It finds all kinds of information. Some of the interesting things that I found to put here. The average length of time in the United States that a child was in care is 21.7 months. However, this is a little bit of a misleading number because 6% of children have been in care 5 years ago. 12% have been in care 3 to 4 years. 6% have been in care 30 to 35 months, and 9% have been in care for 2 years to 29 months. Combined, 33% or 127,000 kids have been in foster care for at least 2 years. So in my research, we put together a bunch of reasons why children might have come to care. These are some of the more common reasons that kids come to care in our survey population. However, one of the things that we found when trying to formulate why foster parents quit their relationship with foster care, we found that none of these reasons were overly picked. As a matter of fact, there was only one reason, violence toward others in the home, that was picked. It was only picked 4 times of our entire sample. This was a very low percentage. It really was spread widely across all of those definitions. As we did our research, we found more and more concerning trends. For example, more than a third of children in foster care experience 2 or more placements year. There are significant disruptions of attachment. There's lack of relative home placements, lack of fingerprint placements, lack of local placements. Children may be placed in the state or placed in the opposite side of the state. And parents don't often seek help for their problems. You know, a resource there happens to be in this room, Dr. Paul. I just had the pleasure of attending another event. My brother-in-law, Dr. Joe Parker, commented in his research on secondary traumas. That was a significant part of my research as well. He found that secondary traumas for the foster parent community were significant. This makes sense. Our foster parents play multiple roles. They are the transporter. They are the therapist. They're the doctor. They're the caregiver. They're everything. So we found lots and lots of secondary traumas. The fact was our parents were doing it. So this led me to the introduction of my specific research questions. Number 1, why do children in foster care have so many placements? How can we decrease the number of placements in public care? And what are the factors to help us understand foster parent retention and scale? Okay. In order to understand foster care placements, you have to understand the 4 basic types of foster care placements in the United States. Now, every state has its own minor differences. But broadly speaking, when children come into care, they go to one of 4 placements. First placement type they go to is relative or fictive. Already explained. Approximately 35% of children, when they come to care, go to public. The second and third types, child placing agencies and resource development. These are very similar. They're what most people think of when they think of foster care. Okay, this is a single couple who has 3 or 4 foster kids. Okay, the difference between these 2, child placing agencies are typically agencies that are they're private foster homes that are run by a company that has a bunch of foster homes. Resource development homes, on the other hand, these are individual foster homes that work directly for the state. Our last group, child caring institutions, these are, again, what we commonly refer to as clinics. These are congregate care homes. When I was thinking about research design, I had to decide what specific population I wanted to. The way that I chose this was by recognizing the significant differences between these and what looks similar. Because child placing agencies and research development look so similar in the way that they're set up, these are the homes that I chose. Many children in foster care do have significant problems. We have lots of attachment injuries, all kinds of trauma. The very fact that the child is removed from the home is by design trauma. So most often what happens is our foster parents start looking at the behavioral problems that the kids have symptomatically they don't want to deal with those problems. It's a fairly common cognitive distortion because almost all the behaviors that our kids engage in the homes are adaptive for the homes they came from. They make perfect sense. If you've got a child who's hoarding food, they're taking it into their room. Well, it doesn't make sense in a home where food is always available. But if your parents are neglectful and maybe they're using drugs, you know you're not going to eat for 3 or 4 days. It makes perfect sense that you're hiding food so that you can eat. Part of what we have to do is figure out how our foster parents understand that these quote unquote maladaptive are in fact defense mechanisms for that make perfect sense. And if we can help our foster parents understand that, then they're less likely to okay, so let's start talking about my actual research. What was the method? Many of you will know I had some pretty significant challenges getting at my foster parent population. I'm not going to go into what all those challenges are. They're not really all that important. But what was important is when I realized how I could get to my foster parent community, which was through social media. I realized, oh, I'm on social media. I've got access to potentially millions of people. Why don't I use this resource? So what we did. What we did was create a link to a survey that I created that included multiple different standardized assessment tools. We sent that out on Facebook, on Twitter, on Indeed, on LinkedIn, and we asked anyone who was a foster parent or knew someone who was a foster parent to fill out the information and to share all that information with their social network communities as well. In the end, the research was set to be live for 30 days. And once a week, I resent out a notice on social media to continue looking at the research. At the end of 30 days, closed down the survey, locked it up so no one else could answer. And by that time, we had 87 respondents who were from a total of 25 states. Okay, so let's take a look at the tools that we used. The first tool that we used was the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale. For those of you who don't know, the ACEs talks about traumatic events that happen in individuals' lives. A score of 4 or more is considered significant and shows very good statistical likelihood of significant health issues in their adulthood. We also use the parental stress scale. The parental stress scale is a standardized tool that we use to identify common stressful interactions between parents and children. We use the Maslach burnout inventory. The Maslach burnout inventory is very interesting because it includes 3 primary components for understanding burnout. Those are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and the other one, it will come to me shortly. Depersonalization. We also use the sampling of several questions here. There's a few questions that we had as well that I didn't include here, but I thought were interesting statistics that people might be interested in. 57.5% of our respondents asked if they had at some point in their foster care career asked for a child to be removed from home. 43.5% said that they did not feel as if the trainings that they had were specifically tailored to meet the kids' children. One of the statistics that really stood out to me, 78.2% of our foster parents said they had 0 access to therapy services for themselves. In other words, they had stress on their minds, did not have a way to meet those needs. So one of the problems that we encountered by putting our survey online is consent. Many may know consent is required to do this. And because our survey was completely anonymous, we struggled figuring out what the solutions that came to which the first solution was in order to finish the survey, they had to answer a question that said they gave consent to use their information. The second one was a large paragraph that actually wrote in there very explicitly saying by convenience they were given. So let's talk about our demographics. As you can see, we were largely female at 90.8%. We had 8% male, 1% of our ethnicity. Again, we were largely Caucasian with 92%. We had 4.6% Hispanic Latino and 1.1% Black Asian. 79.3% of our respondents were married, 3.4% were divorced, 17.2% were single. You can see our sexual orientation over here, largely heterosexual at 8.5%. Of our age, we had a minimum of 26 and a maximum of 74. Years of the foster care, we had our mean was 5.41 years. Well, that's an interesting number. It's significantly more than we see when we're looking at the average child foster care rates of foster care. Actually, I'll point to this research right here. Folks et al. Did a longitudinal study of 14,824 foster parents. Of that percentage, 25% of foster parents quit within 2.5 to 3.8 months. An additional 47% of foster parents quit within 1 year. 73% of foster parents quit within 2 years. 95% quit within 6 years. But the interesting information right here, the average length of time a foster parent remains a foster parent is just under 1 year. Relatively short. Why is that significant? Because the cost of raising a new foster parent is approximately $6,000 per year. So every time a foster parent quits, it becomes an incredible burden on the community care workers. So previous research has identified quite a few different factors that talk about foster parent retention. Up here we've got on et al. Talk about age, number of children in foster, marital status, race, education, handling it all, perceptions of limitation, child welfare system, ability to function fluidly, foster parent relationship agency, flexibility, motivation, confidence, level and onset quality of communication with caseworkers. This is one we've got coming up. Quality of communication. Some of our statistics found that on average, it took over a week for foster parents to get contact with the workers when they had a significant history of their child. And of that population, on average, 44% said the response to the foster parent or the caseworker gave them was insufficient to meet the needs. So let's talk about our experience. First, as I said, we started with our ACEs. We had our MASLAC burnout scores and sub scores on emotional exhaustion, which accomplished. We looked at parental stress, durations of foster parent, length of time children remain in the home, religious, is the foster parent religious or are they spiritual, and what were their coping skills. So let's start getting into some of our results. We had 4 hypotheses in this studies. Our first hypothesis was individuals with high levels of personal trauma on their ACEs would be related to increased parental stress and grief. For this, we ran 2 separate correlation matrices, and what we found was that our sample had remarkably low overall ACEs score. Because of this, our data wasn't as conclusive as we wanted, and that made running some further statistics fairly difficult to do. As we go through this for the purposes of future research, it may be important to find more diverse populations for studying voices. Our second hypothesis was that high levels of parental stress would be related to high levels of learning. For this, we ran a correlation matrix. Our results did show significance for emotional exhaustion, p-value of 0.001 and a fairly strong power R at 0.65. Similarly, we found that depersonalization was significant with p of 0.001. However, the strength of the correlation is somewhat weaker with R at 5.76. Interestingly, the MASLAC 3 components of burnout, our participants felt as though personal accomplishment was good. We ended up interpreting that as foster parents are so good about the role they were playing as foster parents that they didn't recognize the other students part of the experience. Our third hypothesis was that there's a higher importance of spirituality and use of spiritual coping skills that would be related to lower levels of stress and burden. We identified a few facts. First, individuals who identify as spiritual are more likely to engage in use of spiritual coping skills, but the use of these coping skills did not decrease the signs of burnout. We also saw a strong relationship in emotional exhaustion and depersonalization. What we did not see was any direct correlation between emotional exhaustion and spirituality or religion. In other words, religious belief is not a good predictor of whether a person will burn out or not, although it is a good predictor of its various spiritual coping skills. Our last hypothesis, and where I think the most important results were, was that burnout is related to time, as in length of time an individual remains a foster parent, as well as length of time children remain in a home. For looking at this, we have three tools inside of the emotional exhaustion, personal accomplishment, and depersonalization. For personal accomplishment and depersonalization, we found no significant correlations. But when looking at emotional exhaustion in time as a foster parent, we saw a significant correlation, P being significant at 0.042 and R being 2. At the same time, length of child stays in foster parent's home was directly related to emotional exhaustion. 5, the R being 0.27. What we learned from this is that foster parents who are emotionally exhausted are likely to terminate their foster parent role sooner than those not emotionally exhausted. And they would maintain children in their homes for shorter periods of time. Individuals who are emotionally burnt out are extremely likely to be foster parents for shorter periods of time than those who are not emotionally exhausted. Additionally, individuals who reported high levels of chronic stress were directly correlated to having high levels of burnout, which is surprising. But what was surprising was that parents who were closer to burnout but were not yet emotionally exhausted were not likely to be foster. This implies to me that emotional exhaustion in our research is the single most important identifier. So let's start concluding. Individuals experiencing emotional burnout are likely to be foster parents for shorter periods of time than those not emotionally exhausted. Individuals with high reported levels of stress are correlated with high levels of burnout, but are less likely to terminate their role as a foster parent if they're not emotionally exhausted. And individuals with high levels of reported stress but not yet emotionally exhausted are not likely to foster parents. The number one predictor in our research of foster parent termination is emotional exhaustion. And while parental stress alone is not correlated with emotional exhaustion, if left unchecked, it will lead to emotional exhaustion. Because foster parents take pride in their role as foster parents, they often symptoms or know their experience in their life. So what do we do? I propose that first, I think we need to make counseling for foster parents not just available for the but remember, 78.2% of foster parents said they have no access to counseling. We also need to respond to foster parents in this manner. 18.39% said their casework should more than a report properly by the witness. Foster parents need to be trained in a way that's child specific. Any therapist knows you can just have a random therapeutic goal that goes on everybody. They are client-centered and client-specific. Our foster parents need to have the same sort of training for their children. We need to help foster parents better understand the behaviors of their children engage in and adapt to things. So let's talk about the future direction. Where can we go? First of all, 57.5% of our respondents indicated the action of school child, but there was no single obvious. 43% said trainings were insufficient to meet the needs of their children. 47.7% said they were near not meeting their children's needs. All kinds of things. So that gets me to the very end. So it's a little bit abrupt, but I would like to open the floor now to you guys for whatever questions you have.
Like the work that you've done is to try to figure out what is. It also tries to replace several metric, which may now. Is there a way, based on your experience, foster families, and is there a way to somehow incorporate that with regular assessment of the families so they can re-identify the families? And I'm not exactly sure which, maybe the time of the emotion of foster it's true, it's to let things stress and maybe you're faced with either of these things that we to monitor, or is it the situation that people are kind of afraid to admit? For example, if they were asked on a regular basis to fill this out, it might be, well, if we answer this one, we're going to take the kids home. Is there a way to do that process?
So I've actually already started working with the process. And as you guys know, I'm fairly well connected with a lot of the CBS already. So I've already met with the bunch to let them know about that side, specifically about the insurance. And they've started incorporating that into their regular service. Now, how do you get at your mission before you get there? A little hard. I think that's definitely an interesting thing. How can we predict when we should rush? I'm kind of direct answer to that. Yeah, are we identifying folks who are emotionally exhausted? So resources. Oh, yes.
Well, I love your passion, seasonal passion about something that people know, but honestly, I was curious, you mentioned making counseling services for parents. Available foster training, helping foster parents better understand. I was wondering, like, where do you think that communication about changes? Like, is this legislation on the practical? Like, how
in the CPAs, I think this isn't too difficult. It becomes more difficult when we talk about the research. We talk about the homes of overriding. Some of the results, those were significantly worse than we were expecting. So I had a hypothesis about this. If it costs me $6,000 to get a new home, I'm going to put more resources into that home. So I think for the CPAs, it's a relatively easy for this therapist who's like I said, in research development, because I, as random state caseworker, do not incentivize formation of people foster care. So that means a lot. I can say I plan on providing this to the state office today. They can see some results to see it. I feel like we talk about legislation. They might be able to talk about legislation. I know that the state of Georgia is actively working to so ridiculous 10,000 questions. They're never going to get there, but the idea is pretty good. But what they don't is that of those 10,000, 7,500 will go. So they have to keep those people rather than just recycle.
Through the stuff, but based on what you know, I mean, I can think of big kind of ways to go out for the stress. I'm not supported enough. I'm not financially supported enough. I'm not. Not going to have the training. They're going to have access to the people won't respond to me, right? We can predict. But what do you think you had to identify 3 or 4 protected factors, right? Protected factors in the sense of what keeps them in this job, because your average longer than the national average of your population. What about some of these people? What do you think the protected factors based on interpretation of your data?
One of the most important factors that we have, positive communication with when the foster parents felt heard and they felt respected, and just felt like they were addressing kids' needs in their own timely fashion. All of those things led to longer retention. It was as soon as they felt aggravated, couldn't get any results, couldn't get help, and then they started immediately showing themselves.
That would be a protected factor, positive communication, proactive, responsive communication. What do you think would be another?
Well, let me go back to that issue.
Yeah.
So one of the things I didn't talk about in this, but did want to quickly, was it this one of the things that predicted long-term placement stability in the care, whether that was foster home or whether that was protocol or other adopted home, which one of the factors that predicted long-term stability was their caseload. However, the national statistics for foster or for caseloads is 6 months. They turn over twice a year. So kids who are in care for 2 years, on average, have 4 or 5 different caseloads. And that's before that's while they're in foster care. Before they come to foster care, they have their own pre-foster care caseload. So stability is one of the main factors. But if we can further support not just our foster parents, but we can support our case workers, then we increase life.
And even the rest of
Yeah.
what do you consider race in these persons?
I think so. That's guys. That's I love learning, but without this, we're pretty So I commented as soon as I was done. Dang it, why didn't I answer that question? I commented on foster parents felt like they're pretty confused. What I didn't identify was the actual income that families have when they're fostering, which could make a significant difference. Foster parents were making here don't necessarily need the income. And whereas foster parents can make $28,000, they're my whole life. So it's that one really annoyed me. Like I take myself.
Catching that.
I think there were a few other things, but that one was the biggest. If I just been able to tease that out, I feel like it would have been a lot of information.
I was thinking that, for interdirect.
Well, and one of the things that I briefly touched on this, I was quite frustrated with this. I was with how to get specific populations. And because of I wasn't entirely certain, and I can't prove that my respondents were bottom. Like, that would have been nice. They just said they would. Why anybody would take a 15-minute survey and answer 100 questions that weren't, but I can't prove it. So I was handcuffed. So I'd love for the introduction actually.
That's hard because what these restrictions are doing, a lot of agencies don't want that to hear it, right? So it's a struggle. Other questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, as you move throughout this process, obviously you're learning a bunch of different things along the way. How has your professional practice changed if at all from something that you learned from? I've actually started actively sleep process. In my profession. That's something I'm very before it's very thought of. But I did several years. So that has been pretty significant. And now that I'm aware that there's such a significant population, I'm going to pursue it. One of the things that I'm very fortunate is because I moved the company, I can do work at whatever rates I can. So what do you low cost? So one of the major issues we'll talk about therapy is it's expensive. Provide that service to the baby. That's working on that.
Anything else? What we do next?
Well, at this point, and so, thank you all for coming, and we're dismissing the defense form. What happens is that everyone was shut out, including both, and then this community, which was discussed.